we go.
God.
I am super excited for this.
All right.
HK, can you please bring in our guest?
Be happy to.
He's a fellow podcaster. He's a wrestling promoter. He's a wrestler. He's an author. February 28th, Southern States Wrestling celebrates its 34th anniversary. What'd you do with him?
Whoa.
Oh, you killed oh my God.
14 years. 14 years.
I've been practicing this introduction all day. Oh my God. Oh, James.
Thanks for coming, Beau.
Glad to be here. Live television. You can't beat it. So
he is professional wrestling. God dang, man. I had such a great intro. Beau, thank you for taking time out. I know you had a busy weekend. You're traveling the roads, making towns, but I felt like we had to have you on the show to talk about the podcast, what you're doing down there with Southern States Championship Wrestling. And, I'm a big fan.
Appreciate that. I actually, Saturday was caught in the flooding that's been going on here in the Appalachians, and what should have been a trip that got me home about midnight, 1:30, somewhere in between there, depending on the stops, got me home at 5:00 Sunday morning.
Oof.
Because the detours and road closures, and it's just the life of being a wrestler and being on the road.
Now, I did see you got your sheets, though.
I did. I sure did.
Do you have a go-to sheets order?
No, I pretty much like everything they do. I had the turkey wrap Saturday night, but I like their tacos. I like their sandwiches. They had the best chicken salad of anybody, and they did away with it during the pandemic, and I'm still mad about that.
Sons of bitches.
You don't have like some poll, like you could get that back for you? Come on.
I've tried. I've attacked them on social media saying, hey, when are you going to bring it back? I have stopped at Sheets so long and so many of them, and I always tweet or Facebook about it to where they have actually put me on their stuff before. They've put my nephew on there. They've put my little niece on there. So they definitely know who I am.
That's fantastic. And if you are a wrestling fan, you don't know who Beau James is, this is your time. I was introduced him through the Between the Sheets podcast, and it just happened to be when Outlaws to Independence was starting, and it's must listen to podcast if you want to know about the history of pro wrestling. Him and John do an unbelievable job. The last episode was fantastic. God, I even was going to work Ringus into your introduction, and they ruined it. You guys ruined it.
Wait, who ruined it?
Who do you think? The guy below you, KJG.
I hit the button. I hit the guest layout, and he disappeared. I'm sorry, Beau. I apologize to you. Not to Double T, but to you, I apologize.
Breaking my heart.
We're having a lot of fun with the Outlaws to Independence. We did we recorded last night a mailbag episode, which turned into a 4-hour plus episode because we had so many good questions from listeners around the world. John Boucher, my co-host, and I both have been shocked at the numbers that we're putting up with every episode. You get the little map that shows around the world where people are listening, and I'm like, why are people in Japan listening to us? Why are people in Sweden? Why do we have 4 loyal followers in Africa that listen to every podcast? But people are interested in what we're doing because we're doing such a small part. It's a small part of wrestling history, but it's an important part of history, looking at the Outlaws and the Independents before 1999, because guys like Billy Travis, Jerry Lawler, Ron Wright, Whitey Caldwell, there's a whole bunch of them that started in the Outlaws before they went into the territory system. So their stories need to be told, and the promoters that broke them in need to be told.
You mentioned Whitey Caldwell, and I feel like he's a name that doesn't get brought up as much. Do you plan on doing an episode on him? Just how crazy, over he was in Knoxville for so many years?
Well, Knoxville was the city. Kingsport was the territory.
Yeah.
I've already wrote a book about him.
Oh, there we go.
Is that the book that that's coming out in the summer?
No, This is the 60s book. Don't miss this. The History of Pro Wrestling in Kingsport, 1960 through 69. This summer in Waterloo, we will debut The War, the battles for East Tennessee that will go from the 50s through the 70s. Whitey will be a big part of that book, too. Whitey was the homegrown territory star here, and within 3 weeks of his death, each town dropped anywhere from 50 to 70% attendance because wrestling fans said it was too sad to go. They couldn't go without Whitey being there. And they tried different people to get that spot and try to get somebody over. And nobody got over like Whitey until Bob Armstrong came here 3 years later. And then it came, they had somebody to believe in, like they believed in Whitey. And, when Whitey, the day of Whitey's funeral, they shut the city of Kingsport down. The business is closed. The people lined the streets from the funeral home all the way to the graveyard because he was that big of a star here. They did a tribute episode of the TV that week, just showing clips of him and the boys talking about him. This is before VCRs and all that stuff. So many people wrote letters to the TV station. They played it 3 more times, twice in prime time, so everybody could see it.
In 2025, to you, what makes a great local draw for an independent wrestling show?
They got to have somebody they believe in, and that's hard this day and age because everybody wants to think they're smart. You have to make them realize they don't know everything. They know that it's predetermined, but they don't know everything. And you got to get a humble guy. You got to get somebody that people can believe in, that he doesn't have the ego. Whitey was a rare, the only 2 people that headlined their home territory and drew like that was Whitey Caldwell and Jerry Lawler. And I think the biggest thing is because both of them grew up going to the wrestling matches in their hometown and seeing what the people responded to, what the people wanted. They, as fans, had memories of what made them mad, what made them happy, and they were able to use that. And it's hard now because everything's national and everybody's trying to go now, or even international, and everybody's trying to get to that stage to get them to understand how important the small town local fan base is and what they do.
So for those not familiar, you're not only a pro wrestler, you're also a promoter. And February 28th, 11 days from now, 34th anniversary spectacular. How much does that mean to you?
It means a lot. Next year will really mean a lot because that'll be the big 35. There's a couple of promotions out there that's been around as long as we have or longer, but I don't think they have ran as many places. I was at one point in the 90s, we were running 5 states and we were running somewhere every week, most weeks, at least 2 shots, maybe more, plus working for other people. I've always stayed busy. My first job in the wrestling business, I got it at 14 years old. And it was in the territory. It was in the Continental Territory. I worked on the ring crew. I sold tickets. I ripped tickets. I sold concessions. I sold merchandise, whatever they wanted to do. I went, got my parents to drive me to hang posters in the towns, whatever Ron West and Bob Polk asked me to do. If I was able to do it, I did it. Then the territories went away, and here I am. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I meet a guy that's involved in the outlaw wrestling. I get involved in that, and I see the big difference. And I'm one of those guys like Whitey and Lawler. I grew up going to the matches. I knew what people wanted to see. I understood the audience. And at 16 years old, I started a promotion on hopes and dreams and prayers. And here we are 34 years later, and I have promoted from North Carolina to North Dakota.
Is there a world where we can see the territory system come back as opposed to just independent wrestling? No chance. Okay, beautiful.
Not a chance.
All right, great question, Kevin.
The fact if stuff like this right here, the internet is killed. Everybody said cable TV because they didn't see the internet coming. Then it comes. Now you got streaming. Now you got this. On any given weekend, you can sit down and watch the program from Memphis. You can watch our program. You can watch programs all over the country, all over the world. I sit here last night and watch wrestling from Vietnam. So you can't do an angle with a guy here where you break his arm, but he goes over there and works and nobody knows it because everybody knows everything.
That's true.
And the world has shrunk to where we'll never see that again. We will never. We just did a podcast about Jerry Blackwell and his promotion in the late 80s. And it was an outlaw promotion because it was running against Jim Crockett. He was running 4 nights a week and had television in 8 different markets. You'll never see that again, ever.
All right.
Yeah, it's changed. But you seem to you're keeping up in with Southern States Wrestling. I mean, 34th anniversary show. Lord Murphy Koskinen, though. I mean, you got to put on the zebra shirt and you got to go in there because no one seems to be able to, make this a fair fight. And Chase Emery needs that coming on the 20th.
Right. Lord Murphy Costigan, when I first met him, was a young man who thought he knew what wrestling was, but didn't have a clue. And he started riding to the towns with me, and I started working with him. And right after the pandemic, and teaching him and showing him stuff, and he caught on. He's worked very hard to get himself in much better shape. He looks great. He's great in the ring, but he's got a big mouth, and I like punching him in the mouth ever so often, and that will probably happen on the 28th. But he's a guy. He's my kid. And he's got a lot of attention, and he's had several tryouts and camps and things here in the last couple of years. And something's going to happen for him, I think, within the next year or so.
Beau, who's your favorite pro wrestler of all time?
That's a hard question. I grew up in an area in East Tennessee to where we got the Memphis program, the Knoxville program, the Crockett's program. Then the Pafos came in here. So I saw everybody, it seems, on a regional level, from Savage to Lawler to Piper to Valentine, all before they went to the WWF. I had so many of them growing up. The one that's meant the most to me over the years is Handsome Jimmy Valiant.
Nice.
I met Handsome when the first time I met Handsome, actually was on my 9th birthday. He wrestled Harley Race for the world title in my hometown. And I hung around after the matches and got to meet him and talk to him just as a kid. Fast forward less than 10 years later, he's working for me. He's getting me booked. I'm riding with him everywhere. Then I became his driver, and he's part of our family. This wall right over here is just pictures of him and my family and me. I've been to his family reunions. He's been to mine. I've spent, I don't know how many Thanksgiving nights and Christmas nights with him wrestling. And I just saw him Saturday before last. And, I call him Pops. He's like my wrestling dad. And I learned so much from him just riding with him. And, 2025, people want to say online, oh, he's terrible. Oh, he's this. Oh, the man drew money everywhere he went for 60 years. And when he danced out over here in Lee County, Virginia, at the high school last Saturday, the whole building exploded and were on their feet. He did a 2-minute little promo deal and danced right out the front door, and the people loved every second of it. Because once you're over, you're over.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. So I wasn't familiar with you before Between the Sheets, but then I listened, and obviously Outlaws to Independence is fantastic. But when you look through your cage match, you've shared the ring with legends, guys who were on the way up, like you mentioned, before they got to WWF. But that includes like Christian, Jeff Hardy, Edge, Cope, whatever we're calling them today. It's really fascinating to see the career you've had. Do you have a favorite moment in your career?
I have many of them, but I have a very unique 2 moments that mix together. I am the only person in the history of pro wrestling to punch Jackie Fargo and AJ Styles in the face.
It's my man, AJ Styles.
the only other person that I thought could lay claim to that was Jerry Lawler. And I asked Lawler, and he goes, "I've never wrestled AJ." So I'm the only person to punch both of them. And it was Fargo's last match. He was an elderly man. It was in his hometown. We did a little 6-man with him. So he wanted to do a farewell where he lived. He was a big star in Tennessee, New York, Chicago, but not in the Carolinas, but everybody knew him. So he wanted to have a match, and I punched him, and he's going back into the corner, and he puts his hands up, and he goes, "Nice punch, pal." And I just stopped because he has the greatest punch in the history of the wrestling business.
Yeah,
and I thought, wow.
Yeah, I've heard that a million times from a million different people. My question to you right now is, like, you're obviously Southern States Championship Wrestling. Is the stigma still there between Northern, like we're from New Jersey, right outside New York City, right?
Yeah.
So is there still that stigma that exists between Northern wrestling and Southern wrestling?
Oh yeah.
Is that there still exists? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Here's this is funny. I've wrestled in New Jersey. I've wrestled in Atlantic City. I got a poster hanging up over here. Where's the town? South River, New Jersey, and a few other places up there. And when I first started going up there, they said, "Hey, look, man, that Tennessee bullshit you do ain't going to get over up here." I said, "Oh, really? It don't get over with you guys because you didn't grow up with it. Just watch." Went out there and hiding a little gimmick. I had people trying to stab me, trying to take it out of my hands, if you know how, same thing when I went to the Northwest. They told me in Seattle, that stuff don't work here. Oh, yeah, it did. But, and to go back to Lawler, Lawler's told me before about going up there to wrestle in the Northeast. He's like, everybody watched the Memphis wrestling. They loved it. And they all said, "Hey, I love that. I work like that." And he gets in the ring and he's like, "They don't work nothing like us." And I think because it always had that different style of the Southern style and the New York style, bigger man territory, punch kick, up there.
Yep.
We're down here. It was hot angles and more action and excitement. And here there were so many wrestlers at the end of the territories. Because when I was a teenager in reffing, on any given night, I could be in the ring with Ivan Koloff, Jimmy Valiant, Wahoo McDaniels, Greg Valentine, Jimmy Golden, the Mongolian Stomper, all that, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, all that talent lived within 4 hours of me. And I was working with them quite a bit and learning from them, where the guys up there had very few of those old timers that were still working that could lead them and teach them and guide them. It's now a monkey see, monkey do business. Everybody copies AEW, WWE, whatever they're seeing on TV. But it's still a different deal because Northern ran one town a month. Like they ran the Garden once a month. They ran Boston once a month. They ran where Knoxville ran 52 weeks a year. Memphis ran 52 weeks a year. Atlanta ran 52 weeks a year. Kingsport, Johnson City, and Bristol, the Tri-Cities where I live, 3 towns that make a 22-mile triangle, ran every week. So they had the same crowds coming, not every week, but every night because the towns were so close. So they had to have a different match every single night. They had to have a different opponent to keep people coming. That's why Tennessee was the learning ground. That's why Hogan came here. That's why Savage came here. That's why Antonio Inoki came here. Antonio Inoki lived right here in my hometown in the 60s when he was sent here from Japan to learn the American style because he had to go to the same towns every week and had to learn how to have a different match.
Nice. Very insightful.
It's super, like, I can't put it over enough. If you're not listening to Outlaw to Independence, and if you're not supporting Beau on his Patreon, it's like $3 a month. He puts out a bonus episode every month. It's great. If you're not grabbing the books, I got 2 of the 3 books for Christmas. I haven't read them yet because I'm still reading the book about the Sheik, but they're next up in the queue. And those books are available on Amazon. And then you have another book coming out this summer, and it's going to come out while you're at the Tragos Thez Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, that will cover the war. Everybody knows about the Plan B video. that showed up online mysteriously a few years ago with Garvin, Ron Wright, all them going, hey, it's a work, blah, 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 blah. I've had that tape for 30 years and never let it out. It was going to come out when this book came out, but I'm actually kind of glad that it came out before, because now it's opened up such a conversation, because people are like, why would they do that? Well, in the book, you will find out exactly why they did it, who it was sent to, and what the return was of sending that tape to the people. You also find out there was a plan C and a plan D. And those tapes existed until about 5 years ago when Ron Wright burned them. So I explained what was on that. I explained the battles over the territory here. See, this little territory, the Kingsport territory, and then the Knoxville city. The Kingsport promoter and Knoxville promoter worked. It was kind of like St. Louis and Central States. Kingsport was the territory 5 nights a week. Knoxville was one shot on Friday night, then a spot show within 50 miles on Saturday night. They only ran 2 days a week. But we were in between Jim Crockett Promotions, Goulas Welch. So they both wanted this territory and fought for it. And the Crockett family came from here. This is where they're from. This is where Jim Crockett Sr. is from. He was promoting wrestling here in the Tri-Cities in 1933. And they sent him to Charlotte to open up in 35. So he always considered this to be his. And he would back the Kingsport and Knoxville promoters when they had issues with Nick Goulas and Roy Welch and those people. So it was ongoing for decades, that war back and forth. And then the inner split came in 79 when Ron Wright, Bob Root, Ronnie Garvin, Orton Jr., and Malenko left Ron Fuller and opened up their own promotion. And it killed the territory for both of them. And that all will be explained in the book. And I've spent the last 31 years working on this book and the other books, altogether 31 years researching this. I have rode in the car and sat in the dressing room with Ronnie Garvin countless times talking about this. I talked to Ron Wright, Don Wright. I talked to Whitey Caldwell's family. I talked to Jim White. I talked to everybody that was living when I started doing this till now. Talked to Ron Fuller, Jimmy Golden, all the people that were involved. I have their side in the book. So you will be able to read it. Do you take this side or do you take that side? Yeah, I'm like Joe Friday, just the facts, just the facts. And the thing about it, my family has been intertwined in the wrestling business since the early 60s. Even before that, in the boys club, I had cousins that were wrestling with Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell on the boys club wrestling team, and were being coached by Ed Welch, who was Buddy Fuller. So my family's been intertwined with everybody all through these years, and I've been able to be a part of it, work with most of them. I've only had one person that has not talked to me, and I've reached out many times, and that will be explained in the book. And, you know, I think for whatever reason, he's like, well, if he's talked to everybody else, why does he need to talk to me? But I want to hear his side. I've heard him say it before. I've read stuff that he's wrote online about it, but I've tried to give him the chance to answer the questions that I have, and he's not. So it's going to be interesting in Waterloo. If you're a wrestling fan, you need to make the trip to Waterloo, Iowa at least once just to see the museum. I went through it 3 times last year and saw something new every time I went through there. It's a great weekend, big banquet, big wrestling card, autograph signings with everybody. This year, I will be speaking about East Tennessee wrestling history as the book debuts. I'll be signing the books. Hopefully, everything works out. I have some kids from here that will be wrestling out there this summer. It's a big time. Hall of Fame banquet is great. And, you know, it's a laid back atmosphere where you get to meet your heroes. And luckily, it's my heroes that became my friends. So it's like a family reunion for us that have spent our life in this business.
You mentioned on Outlaws to Independence, the latest episode, Gerald Briscoe and JBL just keep dropping stuff in your lap, and you're like, guys, I got to get this book. Like, it's done. And Gerald Briscoe's going on. He's going on a tear on Twitter now. He's releasing all this stuff he's finding in his attic. Are you like,
yeah? Me and him had a long back and forth text conversation a week or two ago about the stuff that he's finding. And I'm just like, Jerry, I know I'm going to get this book done, and you're going to find something that just blows the lid off of everything that you got from Eddie Graham that none of us knew about, or something like that. But yeah, great stuff. I thank the world of JBL. I thank the world of Jerry Briscoe. I've known Jerry Briscoe for several years. I met John last year out there, and I've done their podcast. And, we text back and forth and keep in touch. And, it's just, I think, and I say this on the podcast, the Outlaws, it's getting ready to come out, because John and I talk about stuff that's coming up.
So John,
it's like it was destiny for me to be the person to write the history. I've done the work, I've done the research, but I have a personal relationship with everybody involved. That's why the 60s book came out first, because when I was doing it, Ron Wright was still alive. Whitey Caldwell's widow was still alive. Cora Combs was still alive. I wanted them to see it. Unfortunately, they all passed away right in the last months before it came out. But their families have seen it and been very happy. That's what makes me happy. It's what makes me happy about doing the podcast, when you get a message from one of their children or grandchildren and say, hey, thank you for keeping the legacy or the history alive of our family. Don Wright, who was Ron Wright's brother, the greatest tag team ever to come out of here, tells me all the time, as long as you're alive and I'm alive, Ron and Whitey are alive. And I believe that's kind of true. We keep their spirit alive and keep it going. I've got a soon-to-be 8-year-old grandnephew who loves history and asks me questions about them all the time. And he sits in here in the office with me, and while I'm doing the work, and I'll get excited about something, and he's like, why are you so excited? And I said, look what I found, and I'll tell him, then he's like, oh, that's really cool. So hopefully when I'm gone, he will still be here to tell the stories. It's a sad thing, and this is another reason I do the Outlaws pod. They are such an important part of the wrestling history that nobody knows or talks about. I've worked for Outlaws all over the country, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. Some of them are very important and need to be talked about. Some of them need to be buried and forgot about. But our history is being lost. Our history is dying. Our language is dying. Nobody speaks wrestler anymore. Nobody speaks Carney correctly anymore. Nobody does. I spoke Carney on the Outlaws podcast and taught John some words. I not only had old-time wrestlers emailing me saying, hey, that's the first time I've heard it spoke perfectly in this many years. I had 2 people that are lifelong Carnies from the carnival business sent me messages and said, we got so excited when you started speaking Carney. Everybody had to know it when I broke in. No one taught it. I learned it from sitting in the dressing room and hearing people and hearing it in the ring. And then one night I'm sitting in the dressing room, and an old-time wrestler, Rick Connors, is speaking it to somebody, and the light bulb went boom. It came. I knew everything he said. I said, oh, okay, now I get it. They're communicating with each other, and it was a life-changing experience. That's being lost. Just all of our traditions are being lost. Wrestling has changed so much in the 35 years that I've been in the ring, and I had 2 years of working in office and doing that stuff before that. So this October will be 37 years in the wrestling business. I will turn 51 in July. I'm the youngest old timer out there, and I've been blessed, as you said, to work with so many people that became stars or were stars or were people that I grew up respecting. And, everybody has this dream of, I want to be the WWE, AEW, whatever champion. My dream as a kid was, I want to be that regional star that everybody knows. I want to do commercials for local businesses. I want to be in the charity drives, all the stuff that I saw Ron do, I saw Lawler do. And for several years, I had a great program that a lot of people watched on broadcast TV here. And I was a part of the telethons. I was a part of banquets. Was being asked to do that. So I lived my dreams and I did everything I wanted to. I worked the Memphis territory. I started in the Continental territory. I've worked for Outlaws everywhere. I've ran my promotion. What I do now, we put a program up every week on the Southern States Wrestling YouTube. It's called Legacy because this is our legacy. I take young men and women that want to be wrestlers and want the next step, and I put them in front of cameras. I make them do promos. I make them work matches, work to the cameras, do this and do that. Out of that, I have young men and women that have learned so much, like Murphy Costing that we talked about earlier. I've got a kid that's getting ready to go to Asia on a tour. So I want them to live their dreams and me to give back to the business, and that's what I'm working very hard at doing.
Yeah, this has been like a tremendous, like way more than I ever expected out of this interview, with no disrespect and respect at the same time. Like, I love learning about your history and what you've done in your books. And you just mentioned two names like Gerald Briscoe and John Bradshaw Layfield. There's nobody that's been more beloved than Jerry Briscoe in the wrestling business. And there's probably nobody's that totally like rectified his preconceived reputation than JBL. Like, it's just such a contrast with those two guys.
John is a wrestling guy, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love John Brett. I love when he talks.
He's a throwback to the old days, like I am. I mean, he came up the same way, working with them old time guys in Georgia, and then going to Germany and working with those. He came up hard, man. He worked for everything he got. So, he has a different view. And the episode that's coming out Thursday of Outlaws to Independence, we answer fan questions, and one of them is about booking. And my answer goes on for almost an hour. But I explain booking as it was explained to me from Bill Dundee, from Ron Fuller, from Robert Fuller, Ricky Morton, all these great people that I was around as a young kid, Jimmy Golden, the Stomper, and I would listen and I would take it and I would use it. And I told the boys in the dressing room back 2 months ago, I said, look, we've been trying to do a modern product. The matches are modern. I'm trying to do it because everybody's like, get with the times. Then I got to thinking, wait a minute. I'm the last person that rode in the car with Bill Dundee to learn from him. I've seen the finish books, the legal pads that have finishes wrote in them that drew millions of dollars for Bill Watts and Memphis and all that. I've had long discussions with different guys about booking in Tennessee wrestling and Southern wrestling. So our product, we've went back to our roots. We are a traditional Tennessee wrestling promotion, modern matches, traditional booking, and it's working. Our viewership has went up. People are seeing it. We're doing hot angles. We're doing stuff. And it's so good for the kids to learn it that worked for me because it means it will carry on. It will continue. They will be able to use it throughout their life wherever they go. And I think people will enjoy that on the next Outlaws podcast. And that's just one of about 25 questions that people asked us about independent wrestling.
It's fantastic. There is a fifth wizard, Beau, and I'm bummed that he's not here because you mentioned Gino Caruso on the last episode of Outlaws to Independence. Yeah. And that was Tony, who's not here. That was his professional wrestling trainer when he went to Gino's school. So
wow.
I'm bummed that Tony couldn't be here because I wanted to confirm that he had the worst handwriting in history.
If I knew that, I still have the letter he wrote me. I would have got it out to show you and see if any of y'all could decipher it. I have 3 tubs in my closet right over here. The big totes that's letters and stuff that people have mailed me over the years trying to get booked. And I've kept all of them because many of them I've used and many of them went on to stardom. one of the questions asked on the upcoming podcast is about me working in the Northwest. And I talk about doing the seminars. When the seminars were first starting, I was helping get Tom Pritchard booked with them because Tom was the trainer in WWE. We did a seminar in Pacific, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle. And there was a young lady that came, and it was her first day in America, and she went on to be Becky Lynch. Wow. So, you know, I have I have a connection somewhere with a lot of people that are on television or work behind the scenes. A lot of the people that work at the Performance Center I wrestled with and was in the ring with. So that's another thing that I tell my kids. It's easier for me to get them looked at than a lot of other people because I've always kept relationships. Now, I got people out there that hate my guts, but they don't matter. You know, people of importance, you know, like we've talked about, Briscoe, Bradshaw, all these other names I've mentioned off, and I'm not bragging, but I've had a good relationship with them for decades. And, you know, and I don't really talk wrestling to them, so they know when I come to them and say, hey, I've got a kid. Could you look and just see? They'll go, okay, yeah, we'll do it. That's awesome. So that's another thing that I'm proud about my wrestling career. I've been around so long, I know everybody.
Right.
It's great. Beau, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know you had a long weekend, and I don't want to keep you all night. I will put.
Oh, I can talk all night.
I know you can. I listen to the podcast. I love it. I could listen to you tell stories all day. It's really one of my favorite podcasts. I've listened to all 10 episodes. I'm a Patreon subscriber to you.
Oh,
I just jumped on classicwrestling.net today. I used the code Outlaws in all capital letters. Signed up for a year, saved myself 25%. And it's tons of older wrestling TV that, like, you can't find any. It's great stuff. It's great content. Right. And Beau is digitizing tons of stuff that his fallen comrade has left to him. And if you listen to Outlaws to Independence, there's ways you can help Beau digitize that, not necessarily by getting your hands on it, but supporting Beau's quest, because he will not send you anything. He ain't losing this stuff.
I'm not losing it. It's actually sitting in order right here in front of me, 500 plus hours of video that Kenny left to me. Continental, Nelson Royals, Atlantic Coast, Ron West is North American Championship Wrestling, Pro Wrestling this week that showed a lot of other territories. I'm trying to think what other rare stuff. There's a lot. Jerry Blackwell's promotions in it. There's so much rare stuff, and I get a few hours a week to digitalize stuff, and it's going to take a while. But once I get it done, people will be able to see stuff that was thought to be lost to history forever. And on the last Outlaws, I give a little teaser because I'm not explaining where it's coming from, but I quite possibly am getting ready to get some Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell footage that people thought was lost 55 years ago.
Beau, it's February 17th, 2025. I'm going to say this right now. This has been one of my favorite interviews already. And I'm going to say for the year, top 5 already interviews. I would love to have you back on because I now I'm like mesmerized. I'm going to listen to the podcast. You made a fan out of me, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us, Matt. If you want to.
Thank you.
Beau, we appreciate it. Again, I'm going to link all Beau's stuff in the episode description. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's been going across the bottom, the whole interview. At King of Kingsports on X and Instagram. KingofKingsports.com is his website. Outlaws to Independence at Outlaws Pod. Outlaw to Independence on Instagram. Southern State Wrestling's at SSW Wrestling 1. And then SouthernStatesWrestling.com. Of course, he mentioned the YouTube page and the weekly TV show Legacy. It's all available, and it'll all be linked into the show. February 28th, 34th anniversary show. If you are in Mount Caramel, Tennessee. I even said caramel like a northerner.
1 mile west of Kingsport. We're in the suburbs. We're 1 mile out of Kingsport, Mount Carmel. 399 Highway 11W, which is Stone Drive. We're a mile from Kingsport city limits. 28th. It's going to be a great night. 34 years in the making. Episode 100 of Legacy that's on YouTube, on our channel, The first 7 minutes gives a history of the 34 years. And it took me 3 weeks to put it together. That 7 minutes, because I went and found clips of everybody. I have a room here that's nothing but video. I've saved everything over the years, every move, everything. Misty used to tell me, "What are you keeping all this stuff for?" Someday it will be worth something. And then streaming came along, and I was like, "Here we go." You know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth. Before we let you go, how are you feeling about your Cubs?
Well, this will be my 41st year of being a diehard Cubs fan. My grandmother was my granny. First thing she heard on the radio was the Cubs. First thing she saw on the television was the Cubs. So she was a Cubs fan. Now we're 6 generations of Cub fans in my family. And my little nephew, Waylon, he watches with me every day through the summer. If somebody scores a run, he goes, "Oh, they're terrible." He's already in that mode, you know. So it's one of those things. I don't make predictions. I just watch it, and I ride it for 162 days. And if it continues on after that, I'm excited. But the year they finally won the series, I knew that if they don't do it this year, they'll never do it. And they did it, because that they could score, they could do whatever they wanted to at any point in time that they wanted to during the game. So, but I love baseball. I coach Little League baseball. 2 years ago, I was Coach of the Year. So not only coaching children, coaching wrestling, coaching the children, much better than coaching the wrestlers.
Awesome.
I bet. Beau, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. We'd love to have you back on in the future.
Yes, thank you guys very much. Just let me know when.
We will. Thanks, Beau.
Awesome.
Enjoy the rest of your night. We'll talk soon.
Thanks
All
a lot,
right.
Paul.